Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you to the 5th Voice of Women Conference 2020. The 5th Voice of Women Conference is put together by Women Radio 91.7 and proudly supported by ActionAid Nigeria in partnership with Global Affairs Canada. To start proceedings, we take the national anthem. Thank you very much. Once again, I welcome you, Your Excellencies, to this conference. Every year in the past 5 years, Women Radio has always brought us together to look at topical issues affecting the family, the community, the society, the nation, with a view to agreeing on action plans towards achieving a better society for women and the family. This year is not different. Although it would have been nice to have all of us under one roof for this discussion, but we live in extraordinary times. As the year 2020 unfolded, very many unpleasant packages that left the world reeling under deadly blows of COVID-19 and other attendant issues. The bad state of the economy and COVID-19 threatened the livelihoods of families, especially women and girls, with increased gender-based violence, what the United Nations has labeled as the shadow pandemic. During the lockdown and after. For women and girls, it was double whammy. How do we stem this tide? How do we refocus priorities and resources towards arresting the rise in gender-based violence? What roles should men be playing, and how can we further ensure more socio-political inclusion of women in the project Nigeria so they don't remain vulnerable due to poverty and lack? These and many others are the questions we hope to provide answers to and come up with action plans as we gather as men to raise our voices against gender-based violence, which is the theme of this conference. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome our key guests, keynote speakers and facilitators. I'd like to welcome our keynote speaker, from the State of Peace and Tourism, His Excellency Right Honorable Simon Bakola Long, Governor of Plateau State and Chairman Northern Governors Forum. And from the State of Harmony, my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Governor Abdul Rahman Abdul Razak of Kwara State. I also like to welcome the representative of the Deputy President of the Nigerian Senate, very distinguished Senator Barisi Obiomo Osage, represented by his special advisor here, Dr. Otibe Igboso. I also welcome other distinguished guests who are here. A special advisor on security matters to Oyo Governor and former Commissioner of Police in Lagos, Mr. Fatai Owosheni, is also with us this morning. Professor Larry Bale, CEO Business School, Netherlands International, we welcome you. Ambassador Ayolukomi, DG Nasima, you're welcome. Malam Hamza Lawal, founder Connected Development Code, we welcome you. Mr. Lemi Igwegwe, EDMDI and convener Men Against Rape, we welcome you. Mr. Eric Onoha, an IT consultant who is one of our facilitators, we also welcome you. And Dr. Kole Shetima is the Director of MacArthur Foundation Nigeria. We also welcome you to this conference. And I must also welcome Dr. Tunde Okewale, our Chief Host and Chairman, St. Ives Communications, owners of Women Radio. This session is live on AIT, Liberty TV, Women Radio 91.7, and online at WFM 917 on YouTube and Facebook. And as I said, proudly supported by ActionAid in partnership with Global Affairs Canada. I am Ambrose Olutayo Shomede, your moderator. All the way, I'm informed that all the way from Sokoto, we have The Sarkin, Yakin, Gagi, Sokoto, Alhaji Sani, Omar Jabi, I also welcome you, sir, to this conference. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this point, let me welcome His Excellency, the Governor of Plateau State and Chairman, Northern Governors Forum, Right Honorable Simon Bako Lalong, for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The Deputy Senate President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, distinguished Senator Ovi Omo Agege, ably represented by Dr. Otif Egbozo. My colleague, the Executive Governor of Kwara State, Abdurrahman Abdurazak, the Sarkin Yakin Gagi of Sokoto, Alhaji Sani Umar Jabi, eminent speakers and panelists, invited guests, members of media, and all participants. 5 years ago, precisely on 17 December 2015, the first Voice of Women Conference was organized in Lagos to launch Women Radio 91.7 FM. This dream has steadily grown to what we are witnessing today as we mark the 2020 edition. I'm very delighted as Governor of Plateau State and Chairman of Northern Governors Forum to welcome you to this landmark event. I also congratulate WFM 91.7, Nigeria's only radio station for women and their families, for the great work they have continued to do as a female-centric radio broadcaster. I understand that in the past 4 years, Women Radio 91.7 has organized its annual Voice of Women Conference annually, dominated by female participants. However, the organizers have this year opened the discourse by hosting men and boys on how best to evolve a safe and secure Nigeria for our women and girls. Therefore, the theme for today's 5th Voice of Women Conference, which is Men's Voices Against Gender-Based Violence, unquote, is not only appropriate, but timely, considering the prevailing challenge we face on this subject. I commend the Board of Directors, management, and staff of Women Radio FM for amplifying the voices of men and boys through today's conference. We are all aware that COVID-19 impacted our nation significantly, where it disrupted daily activities. This led to lockdown where people had to stay at home for months as government tried to fight the pandemic. On the other hand, it was a different experience for many of our women and girls in Nigeria who went through horrific forms of violence, including rape, defilement, physical and psychological abuse, even in their homes where they were expected to be safe. It is sad to note that some of our women and girls were violated and molested by people who were sometimes friends and family members. On other occasions, the violation was perpetrated by leaders who are supposed to protect them. This is a sad development that we must end without further delay. As we advocate for a safe Nigeria for our women and girls, we must change the mindset of our men and boys to not only appreciate that women and girls deserve protection, but have rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution as any of us. We must also make them understand that any violation of rights of women and girls are the voices of traditional and religious leaders who are also helping to break down traditional and cultural motivated stereotypes that promote violence against women and girls. Under my leadership, the Northern Governors Forum has declared a state of emergency on the increasing rate of sexual and gender-based violence in the country. We have all resolved and condemned all forms of violence against women, girls, and children. The Forum also resolved to ensure that member states promulgate laws with stiffer penalties against perpetrators of sexual-based violence. As part of our resolve, governors have to ensure the domestication of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 in their various states without further delay. Working with our state houses of assembly, the domestication of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 in the various states will soon be attained. The speakers of the 19 Northern States House of Assembly have already assured us of their support. I'm also happy that other governors have gone ahead to open registers for sex offenders, and other violators in their states, to further name and shame such persons, as well as create further awareness against this condemnable act. For us to achieve a permanent solution to gender-based violence, we need a reorientation that will target the younger generation. We must teach our boys to respect girls and also teach our girls to resist and speak out against any act of violence from tender age. We must equally appeal to our faith leaders to preach love and respect for one another in upholding human dignity. To all men and boys joining this conference for the first time, I urge us to use our positions as political leaders, cultural leaders, religious leaders, corporate experts, fathers and brothers to fight, protect, and advocate for a safe and secure Nigeria for our women and girls. We should remember that girls and women are our mothers, sisters, wives, and above all, the heartbeat of our homes and society. Once again, I welcome you to the 5th Voice of Women Conference 2020. I wish you fruitful discussions and hope you come up with workable options to end all forms of violence and insecurity faced by our women. It is therefore my honor and privilege to declare the 5th Voice of Women Conference 2020 open. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Governor of Plateau State and Chairman, Northern Governors Forum. Thank you very much, sir. I must say that at the end of this conference, we'll be having an action plan and commitments by all of us that will be rolled out at the end of this session going forward. And I hope and wish that I know that you are very busy. You are likely to go into other details in the course of this discussion. But I hope that when all of this is put together and given to you, it will be given live. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. That was the Governor of Plateau State opening this conference for us. We'll now move on to the National Assembly. Let me welcome the representative of the Deputy Senate President of Nigeria. Dr. Otibe Igbuzo is representing distinguished Senator Obarizi Ovie Omo Agege. Dr. Igbuzo will be talking to us on ending violence against women and girls through implementation of laws. Dr. Igbuzo, kindly.
Thank you very much, Ambrose. Thank you very much, Ambrose. I bring greetings from His Excellency Senator Ovie Omo Agege on this 5th Voice of Women Conference 2020 with the theme Men's Voices Against Gender-Based Violence. He's unable to be here presently because of the ongoing Senate proceedings, and he has asked me to represent him. The Managing Director, CEO of Voice of Women, His Excellencies, members of the National Assembly, women groups participating in this discourse, members of civil society organizations, participants in this conference, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here with you to examine one of the biggest social scourges of our time, namely gender-based violence. This problem, which includes sexual violence, physical violence, emotional and psychological violence, child marriage, femicide, female trafficking, female genital mutilation, domestic violence and rape, is destroying relationships, lives, and shattering the bedrock of societies, the family in every corner of the globe. It also threatens our communities and our country at large. This is why we must bring perpetrators to justice. One fact we must not discountenance is that gender-based violence is rooted in gender inequalities, which have found women and girls holding the short end of the stick in virtually all spheres of human endeavor, namely social, economic, and political. However, no matter by whom it is professed and perpetrated, gender-based violence affects everyone, regardless of income, race, gender, or socioeconomic status. Nevertheless, we cannot shy away from the fact that the women and girls are disproportionately affected by gender-based violence. This is not to say that the social ill of gender-based violence is not also against men and boys. Global estimates indicate that 1 in 3 women experiences either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in one's lifetime. From forced and early marriages to the physical, mental, or sexual assault on a woman, nearly 3 in 10 Nigerian women and girls are reported to have experienced sexual abuse, while 43% of girls are married before the age of 18. Once married, majority of these young girls are denied access to contraception, with only 1.2% of those aged between 15 to 19 having unmet needs for contraception. There are usually high levels of early and teenage pregnancies. The plight of women in Nigeria and across the world has been further affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Cases of violence against women have more than trebled during the COVID-19 lockdown this year. According to the Nigerian Ministry of Women Affairs, there were at least 3,600 reported rape cases, more than 100 in each of the 36 states of Nigeria during the lockdown. This figure excludes all other forms of violence and the cases that were unreported. This is unacceptable. Thus, in fighting violence and abuse against women, Nigeria adopted in 2016 a framework and plan of action for the national gender policy. Subsequently, the 8th Assembly passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, VOW Act 2015, which seeks to eliminate violence in public and private life, prohibit all forms of violence against persons in both private and public life, and to provide maximum protection and effective remedies for victims, mostly women and children, as well as prescribe punishment for offenders. Specifically, it prohibits female genital mutilation, harmful widowhood practices, and harmful traditional practices, such as some demeaning rituals that accompany burials in some places that affect mostly women. Since 2015, only 13 states and the FCT have adopted the VOW Act out of the Nigerian 36 states. These states are Oyo, Ogun, Lagos, Osun, Ekiti, Edo, Anambra, Enugu, Ebonyi, Benue, Cross River, Kaduna, FCT, and Plateau. I want to call on all states in Nigeria to domesticate that law without any further delay. Although it may have taken quite a long time for such a stern law to be introduced specifically on gender-based violence in Nigeria, there have been aspects of our common criminal law, as well as the penal code, that frown at gender-based violence, including battery and rape. These laws, as they appear, deal mainly with what we generally know as physical or non-subtle violence. Nigeria has also launched an e-monitoring platform to gather data and better track the culprits of violence. Also, various civil society organizations sexual or non-sexual, subtle or non-subtle. While the federal and state ministries of women affairs, the National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, and women civil society organizations have made important strides to address gender-based violence prevention and response efforts, it is clear that we have not done enough to curb the abuse and violence perpetrated against women. As more cases are reported every day across our society, we need to do more to address the problem. As a nation, we must resolve to have zero tolerance for these abhorrent acts of violence against our mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, grandmothers, aunties, and friends. We must quickly move to address the legal and cultural challenges facing our women. But more importantly, addressing gender-based violence against women will require collective effort of every individual, especially men who are the most perpetrators, to stand up for the protection of women. Men should take more responsibility, intervene, and do what is right to keep women safe. No man has a right to assault a woman for whatever reason, except, of course, in self-defense. It's a
looks like
all perpetrators accountable has come. Religious leaders, community leaders, and traditional rulers should challenge men to stand up as protectors and not abusers of women. We can no longer look the other way while women are being abused next door, or turn deaf ears to the cry of many women across our country for freedom from violence and sexual abuse. Every Nigerian has a duty to speak out against these crimes and to make every effort to report these crimes to relevant authorities and prevent them from occurring. We should also provide care and support to those who have suffered in the hands of abusers. For us in the National Assembly, there is no place for gender-based violence of any nature. We will continue to strengthen the laws to reduce gender-based violence and all forms to the barest minimum, if not totally eliminated. This is why on 14th May 2016, I introduced the Sexual Harassment in Tertiary Educational Institution Prohibition Bill 2016 on the floor of the Senate. And 6 months later, it was passed by the Senate. However, the bill could not make it through to the House of Representatives before the end of the 8th National Assembly. But because of my unwavering commitment to fighting this social ill, I reintroduced the bill to the 9th Senate on 3rd October 2019. And at its plenary section of Tuesday, 7th July 2020, the Senate passed the Sexual Harassment Bill 2020. The bill, now at the advanced stage at the House of Representatives, seeks to prevent, prohibit, and redress sexual harassment of students in tertiary educational institutions. This bill was necessitated because the internal mechanism of tertiary institutions for addressing cases of sexual harassment were either non-existent or inadequate. It is expected that when the bill becomes an act, it will eventually eliminate sexual harassment-related obstacles that inhibit the capacity of persons in tertiary institutions to fully develop themselves based on their gender. The fight against gender-based violence will probably take some time before we reverse the rising trend. It's not going to be easy either, but we must continue to fight by shining a light on the horrendous atrocities visited on women around the country. We must rise up against all forms of gender-based violence, including subtle violence, which is found in all forms of discrimination and non-violent abuse of persons, in this case, based on their gender. As we make progress on this, I want to at this point suggest that Voice of Women and other civil society organizations draw more attention to those aspects of gender-based violence that are protected by African customs, such as some demeaning rituals that accompany burials in some places, female genital mutilation, forced marriages, among others. Although some of them, like female genital mutilation, unsavory customary burial and other rites, may have been captured by extant laws, such as the VOW Act, we need adequate advocacy from organizations such as yours. This is lacking so far, and I implore all of us to pick up the gauntlet and create the requisite awareness. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I wish you all a rewarding deliberation. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Dr. Otibe Igbuzo, standing in for the Deputy President of the Nigerian Senate, Distinguished Senator Obarisi Obe Omo Agege. Thank you very much for that commitment. We move on to Kwara, the place of harmony, and unfortunately, I think the governor just left a minute ago. He's been with us since we started at 11 o'clock, but due to some other serious commitment, he's had to excuse himself. But we'll go over to Kwara State as we're now being joined by the Chief Press Secretary, who will be delivering the governor's address. Governor Abdurrahman Abdurrazak of Kwara State is to talk to us on political inclusion for women and girls. So I just yield the ground to the Chief Press Secretary to come on, kindly unmute and deliver His Excellency's address. Do we have the CPS here? Well, we know that your time is very precious. We all know that, we also know that the issue at stake is very germane. We, however, do not intend to keep you for too long here. And as the moderator, I want to humbly appeal that we keep all our contributions within the allotted time of about 5 minutes thereabouts, so that we can round off in time. As I said, we are on AIT, we are on Liberty TV, we are on FM 917. There'll be a session for us to ask questions from our discussants as we go along, and the call for action and commitment will be rolled out at the end of the session. I want to appeal again that we keep our microphones muted and only switch on when we are recognized and we want to talk. Do we have the CPS to the Kwara governor here so that we can have the governor's address presented? Is to talk on political inclusion for women and girls, but we must say a big thank you to His Excellency. He was with us from 11 o'clock, and unfortunately, he's had to go on to other assignments and commitment. But if the CPS is not ready, I will want to quickly proceed on to the traditional institution, because there's no way we can talk about gender-based violence without taking into cognizance the cost of the.
Good morning. Can you hear me? I'm here.
Oh, okay. I can hear you. The CPS.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Rafi Wajakai. I'm the CPS to the governor of Kwara State. Just like you observed, His Excellency was us on this program, and he had to leave to join his colleague governor. The next meeting, he sends his message to this conference. Basically, the governor commends the Women Radio for its pro-women effort and its campaign over the years. He also believes, as a political leader, that there is so much we can do for women by giving them political power, by empowering them with the right kind of political connection. And that is why when you look at his cabinet, His Excellency asked about the highest representation for women in cabinet, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa. That speaks to his belief in the women folk. He believes so much that when we give women political power, what we are doing invariably is to give them the voice at the decision table, is to allow them to have adequate contribution to policy and decision making. That in itself is a big empowerment for women, and that is why His Excellency has done that by giving up to 56% of his cabinet slot to women. But beyond that, in Kwara State, there are several parastatals that are headed by women. His Excellency has done this to break the barrier, to ensure that he encourages women to be the best and to protect them. Because when we look at the gender-based violence, we will see that this is largely linked to helplessness and vulnerability. And when you are allowing women to be part of the decision-making process, what that means is that the kind of policies and programs of government will be such that will be to the benefit of women. When they have this kind of power, it means they are no longer vulnerable as they will be without political power. So His Excellency believes that he has taken the right steps, and he believes there is no going back about that. Once again, he sends his message of support, he sends his message of hope. He believes that women deserve to be supported every time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CPS. Women deserve to be supported every time, and they need to be encouraged. And they should not be left out of any plan. Thank you very much. Political inclusion for women and girls, the address by the Executive Governor of Kwara State, Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrasak, delivered there by the Chief Press Secretary. We appreciate your coming on. We now move on to the traditional institution. I was talking about the traditional institution, that there is no way we can talk about gender-based violence without the involvement of the traditional institution. We go over to Sokoto, and it's my pleasure to welcome the Sarkin Yagan Gagi, Sokoto State, Alhaji Sani Umar Jabi, who will be talking on men's involvement in fight against gender-based violence. You're most welcome, sir. Kindly unmute and come on.
Very much for giving me the opportunity to talk. The Sokoto traditional institution, traditional institution across the country under the auspices and leadership of His Eminence Sultan of Sokoto. I did everything possible to ensure that male involvement in support of women participations, and that to address all form of harmful practice that will endanger the life of the women. No way. Women are the major decision maker when engaged. They will play a significant role themselves in bridging the gap between knowledge and practice. Between the issue of the gender-based violence, when non-involvement of women in the decision making is a key in creating the problem. And as well, even you try to create a role for women, most of the rural areas, you can find out that education is a major impediment. You can see some local government hardly to have one graduate women. And I believe the empowerment we give to women, no any other empowerment better than giving them education. When they reach the benchmark, maybe to have a graduate among them, they can be able to lead in key opportunities. And I believe, traditional harmful practice and gender-based violence, all forms of violence should be identified and avoided. And there should be enabling law that also be used to prosecute and apprehend the offenders. Anybody who violates the right of women and every other must to be addressed. What? Can you
hear
me?
Ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
The traditional rulers are the custodian of the grassroots. They can bridge gap between the service providers and the community members, between the civil society organization and different development organizations, to bridge the gap to ensure that sufficient women involvement in decision making have been adhered. Women form 50% population. There's no way you can sideline the 50% population in the decision making and you think you are progressing. No progress without women engagement. No progress without gender equality. When we engage women in the decision making, One of the issue in northern Nigeria, controversial aspect of northern Nigeria, having high incidence of maternal and infant mortality as a result of gender bias, gender-dominated human resource for health, human resource for education, and everything. Unless we realize that this is a mistake, we have to engage women in the key decision-making so that they can be able to play active role in bringing out, in reducing the menace. And I believe gender stereotype started from the family. You see that when you are empowering the children, you will see you invest more in the male child education, and you also allow the girl child into street housing, which is against the human right. So education is fundamental human right to every other sex, regardless of female, male, even disability. Everyone needs to be served fundamental right to access to education, healthcare, and even empowerment. So I believe I call on all the northern governors alike. They need to do like the host, the chairman, Northern Governors Forum address. He said that there should be law, and he also called in all the governors of Northern Nigeria to domesticate VOW Act. Thereby, within the domestication, they will prohibit all form of violence against. And then people, most of the traditional institutions, will continue to enhance proper acceptance of the social policies and programs. And then one of the problems Nigerian facing is not law, not policies. There's beautiful law and policies. So many countries borrow from Nigeria, they succeed. But here in Nigeria, non-implementation of relevant VOW Act, relevant child protection law, relevant women law, relevant health law. That is why there's so many beautiful laws, but non-implementation. We need to bridge gap to create knowledge between the community stakeholders and the government and the civil society organizations so that to promote more acceptance and to promote more inclusion of women at the community level, at the community structures. We need to involve women engagement in the decision, social inclusion. Everybody alike in community need to be empowered, need to be engaged to identify what matters around them. In the budget decision, in everything, we need to get them to capture their own want, to capture their priority, so that we can be able to empower every member of society, regardless of sex. And I believe the issue of social inclusion require a lot of religious leaders' inclusion, so that they bring out all the relevant religious instruments to promote dialogue at whatever fora, so that to change the negative perceptions. So many people, when we are talking about development programs, they think it's an imported ideology of Western world, which is not. Before the Western colonies, we have women, we empower women, we educate, and women are also part of decision-making, even before the pre-colonial era. So I believe, why not? If they can do it before the colonial and during colonial, why now? Women are very important. They are our wives, they are our mother, they are our friends. Without them, we can achieve our goal. And I believe we need to empower them to be able to be self-employed, and they can be able to have right to participate in policy and the decision-making and political participation and everything. But when they are not educated, definitely it's like we are doing nothing. We need to get them empowered through education, sound education, to be able to engage in key government ministry and decision-making, so that we can be able to empower the population. No way the labor market is dominated by male. We need to key in the women in decision making so that they can do something at the labor market, so that we can find out at equilibrium level.
Thank you, sir. Alhaji Sani Omar Jabi, the Sarkin Yakengagi in Sokoto. Thank you very much, sir, for your
so much.
Contribution. There are beautiful laws, but challenges lie in the implementation. Women should be educated, empowered, and given a voice. And we need to bridge the gap between what we feel they want, what they need, and the role they should be playing. There should be inclusion. If you're just joining us on radio, this is the 5th Voice of Women Conference with the theme Men's Voices Against Gender-Based Violence. And what we have here are men, decision makers, homemakers, leaders of thoughts and ideas coming together to raise our voices, to put our voices together. As Sarkin Ayagi was saying there, that we need to raise our voices. And as the Deputy Senate President said, we need to say no to gender-based violence, especially those that are targeted against women. We appreciate this opportunity presented by Women Radio 91.7 FM. The support coming from AIT, Liberty TV. This is running live on AIT and Liberty TV, and it's also on WFM 91.7 and online at WFM 917 on Facebook and on YouTube. Let me welcome students from Start Right Schools, Abuja. They're young boys, and we need to start grooming them. We need to start putting them on the path we want them to work. When it comes to the issue of violence, gender-based violence, how do we include women? How do we bridge the gap? As Serki Omar, as Alaji Sani Omar said. Let me go over to the CEO of Business School Netherlands International Nigeria, Professor Lere Bali. Empowering women through business and education. That's what he'll be talking to us on. Prof, kindly unmute and come on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambrose Shomide, and the organizers of this notable event on radio, particularly the Voice of Women, the WFM 91.7 AIT, Liberty TV, and many others who are supporting the gesture. All other protocols observed. One of the critical sustainable developmental goals of UN is actually the number 5, which is to actually achieve gender equality and to be in a position to empower all women and girls. And there had been an association and a correlation that showed in locations and countries with very low empowerment of women, the gender-based violence becomes higher. So the lower the level of education of women, the higher the level of gender-based violence. And it is on this note that educational institutions, particularly leading world educational institutions like ours, we are conscious of this, and we are therefore deliberately making choices in terms of admission procedure or admission criteria. We have over 50% of our students as ladies. Over 50% of existing graduates are ladies. They are women. And the objective is to be able to address gender-specific related factors in order to empower them physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, spiritually, and indeed financially. The financial inclusion is the primary focus of the UN SDG. And the objective is to be able to focus on increasing the flow of resources, particularly financing, through global access to capital for women. And we have realized that empowering women through financial and business inclusion is the way to go. But it is important for educational institutions at every level, from primary, secondary, A-level, university, and postgraduate, to understand that financial assets and financial inclusion to women is not enough. Having created a link between the higher the financial empowerment of a woman in a marriage, the less the likelihood of gender-based violence against them. It's also important for us that money alone is not enough. When women are given access to funding or financial inclusion, there should also be financial literacy. And financial literacy means we need to create a total package of business education. Luckily, women leaders have been assessed vis-a-vis male leaders. And it showed that female leaders are superior leaders. It's well established and documented in about 17 parameters. Female leaders are superior to male leaders. And so if we really want to deal with gender-based violence, and we want to improve the empowerment of women in relationship to their counterpart males, we need to improve the education of business literacy, covering operations management, marketing, In operations management, women are naturally endowed with multitasking work, and so they are capable of doing well in operations. The best student for the graduating set 2020 this year is a woman for Business School Netherlands, had a distinction, and it's a great pride to Africa. Women are naturally good in marketing because they normally have good relationship in relation to other people. And so marketing is not a problem for them. We need to also train them and build their literacy on information management, particularly IT, because the world we are moving into is now driven by the fourth industrial revolution. And so technology is the primary driver, artificial intelligence. Women are naturally people's managers. They know how to relate to people. So human resource management is also key as we empower them in managing their businesses, so HRM is key. Strategy development is particularly important for women because women have a tendency to look at the short-term issues, but it's critical to bring that short-term activities to be linked with long-term. And so business literacy in strategy is key. Business literacy in international management is key as well because today, e-commerce has made it possible for a woman to stay in her house and to be able to reach every part of the globe. The globe has become a village through e-commerce. It's therefore important, as I try to sum up, but I know I just have 5 minutes, that empowerment of women is a very critical global imperative. And we cannot avoid to just abandon half of the world population. It's like trying to maximize only half of our brain. So if we really want to succeed, we want the world to be a better place, that population that accounts for about half of the population of the world must be sufficiently empowered. And the more you empower the women, the better the next generation is. But they spend more time with our children than we do. So because we know that the majority of poor people are also women, there must be deliberate effort to actively put policies in place to actively support the women. In a period of war, it's the women that suffers most. And so because they are in the majority, or at least half of the world population, we need a quantum leap in women's economic empowerment, and educational institutions will do well to teach women empowerment, not just at the postgraduate level, but to start to address it from primary school, including the issue of ethics and how to manage women. Right. As I close today, we will appeal to all the first ladies of the various states in Nigeria, along with the first lady at the federal government level, to actually participate actively in the World First Ladies of the World Summit, and to bring back best practices as to the way to actually increase women empowerment. Money is not enough. Education is key. Providing scholarship to women actively, we go a long way from primary, secondary, A-level to university and postgraduate level. We go a long way to transform the women. I would like to thank the organizer for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. I know that we can go on and on and on when we want to talk about empowerment and all of that, especially when you have professors on coming to talk about subjects like this. Thank you very much, Professor Leribali. We'll take a breather here to take Women Radio's 1 minute video, just 1 minute. Then we'll be back with a panel of discussants. But I must appeal that we are already running out of time, and on television especially, every minute counts, and we have just less than 30 minutes to round off. The 1 minute jingle.
Today, 5 years ago, on 17th December 2015, Nigeria's only radio station for women and their families, WFM 91.7, was formally launched. It has been 5 exciting years as a voice of women, 5 fruitful years breaking the silence culture, 5 fulfilling years amplifying the voice of women and fostering national development, 5 challenging years demanding for gender equality, accountability, fairness, transparency, and good governance. We could not have achieved this without you. As we host the 5th Voice of Women Conference, VOW 2022, today, 17th December 2020, we look forward to more years using Women Radio platform as a tool for women development in Nigeria. This is Women Radio WFM 91.7, the voice of women.
Women Radio, congratulations. Thank you very much for providing this opportunity for men to raise our voices against gender-based violence. And we thank your excellencies. Even though you are on to some other commitment, we know that your special advisors are listening in and will give you the necessary feedback. Let me now welcome my panel of discussants who have been with us since we started. And I want to appeal that we keep our contributions to within 4 minutes to 5 minutes so that we can maximize the little time that we have left. First to go is the Director General, Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, Ambassador Ayola Olukoni, has always been with us when we discuss this matter. Ambassador Olukoni, please unmute and comment, sir.
Well, thank you very much, moderator. I hope I can be heard clearly. I also want to join others to say congratulations to Women Radio for this event, and I want to quickly stand on existing protocols. I sincerely hope I can be heard properly. This is indeed a very, very important issue, and I'm very happy that Women's Radio has been able to sustain this initiative for the past 5 years. But let us quickly put in proper context, let us put in proper context this discussion. And in this context, I would like to make reference to what the United Nations exactly has done in this time, because that is the lead agency as far as the international processes itself is concerned on gender and development issue. 5 conferences, the conference in Mexico, 1975, the conference in Copenhagen, the conference in Nairobi, International Conference on Women in Development in Nairobi, as well as the Beijing context. The 2 conferences in Nairobi and, of course, Copenhagen and Mexico are very, very important. Nairobi was where the UN and the international community looked at the question of rural women. And I think I must say that that was where Nigeria itself got the idea of better life for rural women up together. That means that the international processes, put us was very useful reference in terms of what we done. Then come to Beijing, 12 critical areas. It was Beijing that also pushed us, Nigeria, to, establish the Ministry of Women Affairs.
We seem to be having some challenges with Ambassador Olukoni's audio.
Mr. Chomida, I'm back. I think I'm back.
Good. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So I said Beijing was also very, very important for us, and that was where we had the UN Platform for Action. And don't also forget the CEDAW. The CEDAW is the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which we also signed up to. So all of these is the reference point in terms of what exactly we're doing at this particular period. And I'm indeed very glad that we are here today. So, but the issue now is that how do we mobilize people? How do we mobilize men especially? And that's why I want to make reference in this context to the He for She initiative. The He for She initiative is the new frontier as and the issue of gender equality. And then the struggle against gender violence is concerned. The He for E initiative simply says that it wants to mobilize 1 billion men and boys to be able to come on board in terms of recognition of the battle and the struggle against gender violence. So as part of our outcome of this conference, I want to recommend that we include the E for She initiative. It has been launched in Lagos, and I want to recommend that it should be launched across all the states. It's very simple. It simply says we must educate our men. We must socialize the boys from early stages to be able to do what exactly, to let them know that, look, gender-based violence is wrong and that women should be recognized for what they are. This is my recommendation. against the background of our discussion here, please let us focus and also come up with plan of action on the he for she initiative. These are the ideas, these are the areas which can be very useful for us. And I think we can launch it across the 36 states. Our respective first ladies can look into it. I'm sure some of them are working on it, and know that Lagos State, of course, has done it. And so it's a new area, which of course decides, which helps us in terms of a reference point as far as the next line of action. And I also want to suggest that women radio should one of these days look specifically at the he for she initiative. What does it mean? So that we can have an understanding and of course draw a plan of action. Because we must start educating our young people, especially our men, from the beginning as far as this is concerned. And I think it must also be put into the curriculum right from primary school levels and also all area of education as well. These are my points. Like I said, I strongly recommend that as part of the outcome of this discussion, the he for she initiative of the United Nations should be domesticated and used as a reference point in terms of the question of what's to be done on the issues of gender equality, battle against gender violence, and all other issues, and advancing women's empowerment amongst all our purposes.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. And congratulations again, once again, to Women's Radio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We do appreciate your contribution as always. We're glad. He for She initiative, socialize the boys and educate the men. I should say this. There are quite a number of questions that are coming across. I want you to use the chat room to send your questions to the participants and to the facilitators. They will be answering, but of course, we'll still make room for a question and answer session as we go on. We are running out of time and we need to move on. Social empowerment of women and girls in achieving generational equality. That's what Ambassador Lukoni has spoken about. Let me now move on to the founder Connected Development Code, Malam Hamza Lawan. What should the role of men and boys be in a safer Nigeria for women and girls? Malam Lawal, please unmute and go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. Let me add my voice to congratulate women.
Hi, everybody.
Let me add my voice to congratulate Women Radio. Again, we must understand that this is about power dynamics, both economic, political, social, and cultural power. And again, as men and as boys, let us first own up and take responsibility, because we always proud ourselves and call ourselves strong men. And so far, what we have seen is strong men is failing. Strong men are failing to protect the weaker gender. They're failing to protect people who are vulnerable in the society. And when I say weaker gender, I'm not only referring to women who are vulnerable, also boys who are vulnerable. And we must also understand that this is about investment. So I know most time we talk about empowerment, but let's look at it as an investment for our future collectively. Today, if we put the right investment in place, what this means is we would enjoy peace and security. Women play an important role in society, because for every society that have succeeded and have thrived, if you go back memory lane or history, you will see that women had played her own contribution in policy and decision making. Nigeria is a country where it is sad that we've not even passed policy and regulatory framework, particularly at the subnational level, that also empowers local government to provide the needed infrastructure that empowers our law enforcement agencies to bring perpetrators to book. So as much as boys and men have a role to play, we must look at it first from a legislative and executive and judicial point of view. But then, generally speaking, I think for a start, let's be good people, because being good even make you feel good and make you feel happy. Nigeria is in a point where we need to relook and rethink about how we do our things and how the role of women contributes towards nation building. for boys and for men. First, for men, our boys always do what we do and don't do what we say. So what this also means is, as role model, we must be very conscious of what we do, because the boys are watching and they would repeat what we have done thinking it is the right thing. And for boys, I believe this is an opportunity for you to use the education that you're learning, because again, education provides an avenue for you to think positively and critically and contribute positively to nation building, starting from your various communities. And as boys, I think also is, whenever you see something wrong, you have to say it or report it to your guardian, and using your tongue to advocate to other boys, correcting them and telling them that, as boys and as girls, we must see ourselves equally. As men and as women, we must continue to see ourselves equally. And because in the eyes of God, both in the Islamic and Christianity religion, we are all equal in the eyes of our Creator. I believe that if we can get this right, both from legal and regulatory framework, from our communities, from our homes, then we would have gender and sexual-based violence as a thing of history. Let me also state that we know that religion and culture plays a very important role. I believe, and I'm excited that we had a cultural and an Islamic leader who has added his voice to this campaign. We must continue to change the norm, shape the norm that allows for fertile ground for women and girls to strive and meet their potential in life. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I think we need to, that could be a slip. We need to move away from this perception that women are weaker, the weaker gender. Because once we continue to hold on to that perception and believe, the younger ones that are growing up will continue to mirror that. We continue to feel and believe that they are not weaker. And we need to be conscious of that. But I must thank you, sir, for your contribution, that first we need to be good people. If we want a better society, we must be good people. And we must teach our boys right, because they mirror us. We must be conscious of what we do, because they will do what they see in us. Let me now move on to the Executive Director, Make a Difference Initiative, and convener Men Against Rape, reorienting men's perception towards women and girls. How do we start that? I'm glad that we have some students, secondary school students that are joining us. They are boys, and we need to start grooming them to become good men from boys. How do we start to change that orientation? Mr. Lemi Ugegbe, kindly unmute and make your contribution.
Okay, greetings to everyone. Thank you for having me. Congratulations to Women Radio and my sister Tom. This is pretty straightforward. A lot of the perception that men have towards women and girls have been adumbrated here by earlier speakers. But we must say that there are certain myths, certain perception. One, women and girls are seen as less than men and boys. Women are seen as weaker vessels. Yeah, physically you may say that, but women are emotionally stronger than men. What a woman will go through 10 times over and still be there standing, a man will not take a quarter of that and survive. So women are specially built, specially made, meant to be understood and cared for, not subdued and subjugated as we have. So in going further, I think the greatest vaccine against gender-based violence is really re-education. Education is the greatest vaccine, and it must start early enough. Now, all of the treatment, all of the discrimination, all of the perception that makes the woman that limits the woman to a certain kind of job, or limits her and feels that her voice should not be heard, she should just be seen, are a product of our the patriarchal norms and tradition in our society. I call it actually the conspiracy, the tyrannical conspiracy of religion, culture, tradition, and our laws. Now, that's the reason a man is grown 40, 50, and still looks at the woman inferior. So what can we do? In the words of Atjonak, he says, the illiterate of the 21st century is not he who cannot read and write, but he who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. We need to unlearn those societal norms, those perceptions that have made the man and the boy who becomes the man to see the woman and the girl as being inferior. So education means continuing advocacy, and we must start it early. Our generation upward already have suffered this. So indirectly too, through all of these patriarchal norms, some of us men will find ourselves as victims of wrong teachings, victims of sociocultural ethos, and we need to unlearn those. But the way to really solve the problem is to start from the tender age. I'm glad that Start Right School is here. So we can start right with the kids from primary school. And that's the essence of our organization, Men Against Rape. Men Against Rape sees that the best way to achieve this is to catch the kids young. So we need to have, one, inculcate in our curriculum how kids can relate with civility. One, can we teach as parents, when Janet does not want to play with John, can John respect the fact that, yes, Janet played with John 2 days ago, 3 days ago, even yesterday. But Janet today says, I want to be on my own. I don't want to play. I'm talking about primary school kids. Can daddy and mommy teach John to respect Janet's space? Now, once you can teach John to respect the fact that Janet has a right to say, yes, I played with you yesterday, but I don't want to play with you today. John is taught to respect that. There is no way John will grow up knowing that particular thing is the right thing, and he will grow up to become a man who is abusive or become a man who seeks to sexualize the girl child who has become a lady, an abuser. So it starts from that basic. We need to work on that. Then, of course, the whole idea of our laws, I talk about the conspiracy of society. The law itself, it's a totality of our sociocultural ethos. Now, we need to work again while doing the reorientation, teaching the boys, teaching the men to unlearn those wrong perceptions, to begin to know that real men and real boys actually show their strength by protecting the girls and the women. They do not show their strength by subduing or overpowering the women. Real men, real boys don't hurt women. Real boys and real men actually tender.
We need
now,
you need to summarize.
Yes.
Just summarize.
We look at our laws.
We are out of time.
For instance, Men Against Rape has looked at the Penal Code, Section 55 of the Penal Code, for instance, which says that a man who has married his wife by native law and custom can pick the whip and beat her as though a slave or a child. That is one of the provisions that encourages gender-based violence against the woman. Pick the whip and beat her. 2, early child marriage, for instance, is a gender-based violence, and it's in conflict with the provision of the Constitution that talks about 18 years as the age of maturity, as the age of adulthood. But the Penal Code says if a child has grown old, grown to 14 years, or has begun to show signs of puberty, she can be married off. That is child marriage, and we need to correct those norms. Correct those norms by going to teach that, one, even if you are citing any of the religious canon, it is wrong, because even I can say with authority that there is an hadith in Islam that says a man who trains his daughters to age of maturity has a special place in paradise. So let's not confuse religion for tradition. Some cultural practices are confused as Islamic practice. It's not Islamic at all. Now, in rounding off, the essence of Men Against Rape is to help begin to get this right from the tender years. Get the primary school kids together and begin to teach them this. Get the secondary school students together, teach them. Get the university undergraduate, begin to teach them how to relate well. Now, in doing that, laws must back it. And by January next year, we briefed our lawyer, the law that discriminates against the woman and makes it possible that a man will pick the whip and beat his wife because he feels offended. That's gender-based violence. Men Against Rape is going to court in January to file an action to seek that that provision be repealed in order to demonstrate our commitment to ensuring that gender-based violence is brought to its knees. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Lemi Uwegbe. As I said earlier on, we're already drawing the commitments. At the end of this session, we should have action plans and commitment. And I know our team are already working on that. Let's look at the position of a bit of the law and security. Working with security sector in ending gender-based violence. I know that this is a subject that we have discussed over and over and over. And our next speaker, Mr. Fatai Owosheni, Special Advisor on Security to Oyo State Governor, is very, very much at home with this. Mr. Owosheni, sir, kindly unmute and come on. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Ambrose, and thank you for the opportunity that has been given me. Let me first say that generally the challenge of reducing to the barest minimum this pandemic, gender-based violence and other violent practices actually is not really the absence of laws or inadequacy of the laws. The belief and the erroneous belief has led to so many enactments and so many legislations being made. And all these laws that are being made, if you notice, and the legal practitioners will also observe this, are not properly harmonized. And when so many laws are made, making laws to be ambiguous and verbose, you find out that the agencies that are supposed to also implement and enforce those laws get confused. And when it comes to implementation and enforcement, up till today, the Nigeria Police Force is the pivotal agencies because of its widest coverage. The police, at first, battling with image and confidence problems. Of course, the police has also been accused of inadequate requisite skills. But there are so many issues. Going by experience of someone that had worked as a policeman before, there is the absence of the modern technological aid to investigation. We talk of the DNA and forensic technologies. We also have the pervasive cultural norms, which in most times when you are investigating cases of gender-based violence lead to pressure on victims and families to withdraw those charges. Or sometimes when you charge those cases to court, refusal to show up in the law courts for those cases that are charged to court, and then you don't get justice. Then you have the lack of access to specialists like the psychologists and the rehabilitation centers. But most importantly is the issue, which is very key, the non-appropriation of resources to discharge obligations that are placed on the enforcement agencies. If you've been following everything that has been discussed, even in the message of the Senate President, they mentioned the issue of making steps to strengthen the capacity of the law enforcement institutions, especially the police. But however, it is not all hope lost and lamentation. I know that the Nigeria Police Force at a point in time, with the support of the UN Women and the United Nations Population Fund, had come up with a gender policy for the Nigeria Police Force. And that policy document was developed to have a framework which allows for respect for human dignity, social justice, and the elimination of those acts that serve as threats to individuals and national security. However, moving on from there, we must be looking at how to ensure that necessary resources and appropriation are made for the agencies, especially the police, to discharge of the obligations that are placed on them by the different laws. If you are saying that, oh, yes, the police must ensure that victims are taken to the hospital, to the rehabilitation centers, and you are not making provisions for this, for how to discharge those obligations, you will still find out that the gaps are there. And when we are doing advocacy enlightenment, it has to be simultaneous among all the units of the criminal justice administration and, of course, the people. Because if you are building capacity in one end and lacking in other end, especially educating our people, the traditional rulers, on some of these practices that are repugnant to law, and just hammering on one agency, we will not be able to bridge the gap. So essentially, we must be able to provide that implementation gap, that is, provide and appropriate resources with which to carry out the enforcement and the implementation of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, Mr. Fatai Owoshin. It's strengthening the capacity of law enforcement agencies. We should not leave them out. We must empower them to be able to discharge their responsibilities. Let's move on to addressing violence against women and girls through technology, and that will be the last contribution that will be taken from the panel. And we're now joined by Mr. Eric Onoha, who's been on. Sorry, he's been on. I'll yield the ground to Mr. Eric Onoha to have your 4 to 5 minutes. How do we address violence against women through technology?
All right. Thank you very much for having me. So I'll try to be brief in my explanations here. So I want to talk about this in more realistic terms. I want to sort of distinguish how you can sort these problems out with technology from the sort of fads that we have with different technologies. There's no app updates that can solve problems of gender-based violence. There's no new magical technology that's going to solve many of these problems that have been created over a lot of time and years. So many of these things are at best mitigatory. So I want to just bring this to this realistic sort of perception of what we can actually expect technology to do. I think some of the problems you have with some of these things, like let's say apps to help measure consent, or date rape, drug detectors, or all of those sort of things, are that they are possibly pretty invasive on what they expect women to actually do in order to protect themselves. Or in many cases, they push the burden to women to actually protect themselves and make lifestyle changes that are quite difficult sometimes. Or you're always chasing the game in many of these cases because new technologies often create new ways for abuse. Because when you have social media, that's when you have things like revenge pornography, and you have all other sorts of things that can actually be a problem. They're also not as intricate as the interactions that humans have. You can't have a consent app that would track continuous and withdrawn consent. You can't have an app that would be able to do things like track non-verbal cues that color the way interactions happen between humans. So I don't think those are the sort of things that we ought to be expecting technology to do. I think the real impacts that we can expect from technology are things that actually, or technologies that actually help facilitate and track the progress of the real work that activists do in helping to fight and the war for the hearts and minds of people. If you're not going to be able to change the perception of people, then no technology is going to just be able to magically solve many of these problems. So a couple of ways in which technologies can actually help would be through things like to say, for example, accelerating progress, because you have a wider array of conversations in the sense that people are now conversing across the world through different cultural interactions and exposures. That means that you don't have to rely on simply with the limitations of your cultural area or your cultural imaginations. As someone who is in a place that's pretty backward, you can still be exposed to the debates and discussions that go on in other parts of the world that are a bit more exposed, and you can leverage off of those things to ensure you have real progress even wherever in your society. It's also things like, so that's where you have things like social media helping to have that sort of interaction amongst people. It's also the ability to build community. And this is important in two key respects. It helps for you to build support structures, the ability for you to be able to reach out to someone when you need help. It also helps activists in terms of their planning. It helps to solve collective action problem in many cases because people are already discussing these things online and are already talking about the best ways that can actually help with many of these problems. It also helps in things like data aggregation. There are apps and things where you can help to track data, where you can find out specific areas and the sorts of gender-based violence that are going on in those areas. I think what that does is that it makes the problem very obvious so that people can't just say that it's just one singular case that isn't representative. But it also makes advocacy a bit more targeted. If you know that this sort of violence is what's being committed in this area, then you're more able to have a targeted approach in solving many of those things. And that's the way I think technology can help us in facilitating many of these fights. But also, I think it's also a more democratic platforms. Speakers prior to myself have spoken about how the ability for women to actually gain sorts of capital is actually helpful. And I think the more democratic system or a democratic platform of where women are able to also have a say in the digital world, I think is also very important. The ability to have your entrepreneurship and your ability to build funds and capital off of a more democratic system that isn't reliant on the same structures that existed prior to technology, I think is something that also helps. And there've already been discussions about how capital can help empower women. I don't need to go so much into that. But just lastly, I want to talk about the sort of limitations that we have from technology. Technology obviously is a great tool, but the limitation we would have would be in things like relative poor socioeconomic status. So some women might not be as well-to-do as other people, and you might not be able to reach them readily. They might not be able to gain access to your social media accounts to build up all of the benefits that we talked about. I think this is where we ought to be able to do things like lobby governments to ensure that you have proper structures. If every single person in any community can have access to technologies, they should be able to have access as a community, whether it be through building of libraries or places where people can actually gain access to many of these technologies. Because the world we live in now is one where we ought to be able to leverage all these technologies. And women, even poorer women, should not be left behind.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Onoha. I must thank all our discussants. We are running out of time, and I have the challenge of managing the remaining 6 minutes between questions and the call for action and commitments, the vote of thanks, and all of that. So I want to advise that you put all your questions across via the chat platform, and there are questions already coming in. One says, what are the consequences of violence against women and girls? And okay, it says, what are the root causes of violence against women and girls, especially during the period of the lockdown? And what does gender-based violence, how does gender-based violence affect women? Comrade Jibrin Mohammed Benji is representing Sokoto Youth Against Gender-Based Violence. And I just turned that one to Mr. Awosheni, Fatai Awosheni. What are the consequences for gender-based violence? Maybe in 1 minute. Mr. Awosheni, sir. It looks like is gone. Dr. Iguzo, you want to help us here. So what are the consequences and what led to the increase in gender-based violence during the lockdown? Can you help me answer that just within a minute, sir? Dr. Iguzo.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, there are a lot of consequences on gender-based violence. There are economic consequences, there are social consequences, there are health consequences. In fact, it can lead to death, so gender-based violence is quite bad. there are many arguments on why there was increase in the gender-based violence during the lockdown. One of which is that people react to stress in many ways. During the time of movement, a husband gets irritated by the wife. He just picks his shares, he goes out to go and drink and come back and sleep, you know. But you are locked together within that space. So I think that's one of the main reasons that people have given for increase in violence during this period. There has also been arguments as to whether, you know, what we have been seeing is increased rapportage and not necessarily increase in the incident. That the incidents have always been there, but people are getting to speak out more these days. So those are just all the arguments that are being given.
Thank you very much, sir. Our time is running out. We don't have much time because of TV. We must thank AIT. AIT has been with us since we started Liberty TV. We do appreciate your time, your support, and contribution. Let me go over to Dr. Kole Shetima, Director of MacArthur Foundation Nigeria, for call for action and commitments. That is a summary of what has been said here and what we should be taking home as government, as a people, and as men. Dr. Shetima.
Thank you very much, our able moderator, for this wonderful chaperoning of this event. I think it has been a very wonderful conversation that we had. And let me also join others in thanking Women Radio for organizing this event, and congratulations for this 5th anniversary, and also for gathering a distinguished panel of speakers. But especially thank you for also bringing our young people to participate at this event. I think these are all signs of what new Nigeria should look like. And I'm very happy that we were able to do that. Just because of the interest of time, I want to make a summary of some of the most important points that were made. And I hope that all of us here will commit to do one or two things to ensure that we succeed in the work that we want to do. I think that we want to commend the chair of the Northern Governors Forum for this wonderful commitment that he made in terms of the role that the Northern Governors are going to play by working with the Northern speakers, the speakers of the House of Assembly, to ensure that all the states pass the VOW law, which is very critical and very important element of what I think we need to do. And as the representative of the Senate President has said, laws are critical and laws are important. And I think that the National Assembly have done its part of the bit. And he has reminded us that there are 13 states so far have done, but the remaining states have not been done. And therefore, I hope that the Senate, the National Assembly, the other assemblies will work towards ensuring that the laws are passed into law. But I think that the Sarkinyaki have also made the point, which I think is critical, which is that laws are critical and very important. But more important also is the implementation of those laws. So I hope that members of the executive who are here, and those of us who are in a position to make this happen, will also see to the importance of the implementation of whatever laws that we have made and other things. And we're very excited, and I think there is an example from Kwara where there is a greater number of involvement of women in governance. And I hope that all of us who are in position of authority and power will ensure that more women are actually also involved in ensuring that that more women are being appointed in appointed position, so that we can have a better governance structure and others. Governance and structures involvement and laws are critical and very important, but I think we have been reminded about the need for financial inclusion of women. Our colleague, our friend from the Business School of Netherlands have made the point that financial inclusion is critical and very important, and that we have to ensure that these are critical and important. I hope that every one of us, we can do that one as well. And this is not just about women, and I think that Hamzat have made the point that this is actually investment in our future. So it's in our own interest that every one of us make that kind of commitment and ensure that we invest in women, not because of them, so to speak, as women, but that this is really about our future and we should do that one. I think there's a proposition that have been made by the ambassador where he said that, look, each and every one of us should join the he for she campaign. Let each and every one of us set up a nucleus. Let every one of us go to our workplace. Let every one of us go to our school. Let every one of us go to wherever we find ourselves and be part of this movement of he for she, because this is critical and very important, because we know that predominantly men are responsible for the violence against women, and therefore it is us coming out in solidarity, working together, trying to create this new men, in this new Nigerian men. That is what we want to do in other things, and that's the point. I think that our friend, I believe it was Daniel, who made the point about learning all the cultural and traditional practices that have undermined women so how do we see our culture? How can we unlearn those cultural practices and other things? And those cultural practices then, which will lead to the creation of new men, so that new men can also create this new idea and this new Nigeria that all of us, we want to create and show. And there is a role for technology in that regard. Technology is a double-edged sword, can be for bad things, and many of the time, I think we always know and hear about the bad ones. But in reality, technology can also be an institution for something that can good to happen as well. So these are some of the commitments that we have made in terms of what we want to do and other things as well. And therefore, I want to suggest to all of us, let's take 2, 3, 4 things. Let's not take everything that we have said here. Let's commit to ourselves to 2 or 3 things that we, each and every one, want to do when we back home. We can certainly set up a nucleus, a group of people on he or she. We can also try to consciously work with our young people, our boys and girls at home, because there is something that law and others can do, which I think that what the Senate President, what the governors of our system do. But what do we do at home? How do we treat our young girls? How do we treat our young boys? And these are learning, and the learning of new Nigerian boys and men, I think it's critical and very important towards making it possible for us to create this new Nigeria, a new Nigeria whereby our young men and our own boys have become part of the solution to the problems against violence against women, whereby all our traditional institutions are also part of this process of making this change to happen. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this platform with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Okole Shetima, Director of MacArthur Foundation, Nigeria. MacArthur Foundation has been very supportive all through the course of this journey, especially this year. Thank you very much, sir. Again, we are already out of time. In fact, the TV stations have been magnanimous to allow us to overshoot the runway. And you know, when you overshoot the runway, it could be disastrous, and we don't want to do that. We go over, so keep your questions on the chat box. Let's use that platform so that we can have the facilitators and discussants respond to some of the questions that some of us are raising. There will be there's no time for all of us to come on to ask questions to be part of this, because we need to begin to round off now. But before we go, our chief host is here, the chairman, St. Ives Communications, owners of Women Radio, Dr. Tunde Okewale, will come on to give us the vote of thanks. The chairman, Women Radio, Dr. Tunde Okewale, kindly unmute and make your contribution, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambrose. Actually, it's Mr. Abayo Mishonaya who is given the full vote of thanks on behalf of the chairman. All right, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, all. Distinguished Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Ovie Omoagege, Executive Governor of Plateau State, Governor Simon Bakola Long, Executive Governor of Kwara State, Governor Abdurrahman Abdurazak, Sakin Yagi of Sokoto, Alhaji Sani Umar Jabi, Dr. College Shetima, Director, MacArthur Foundation, Nigeria, our panelists, Director General Nasima, Ambassador Ayo Olukoni, Malan Hamzat Lawa, Executive Director of Connected Development Code, Lemi Ugegbe, Executive Director, Convener Men Against Rape, IT Consultant Eric Onoha, our able moderator, ace broadcaster Ambrose Shomide, and all participants of VOW 2020 conference. Thank you for your loud voices today. I feel honored and privileged to deliver a vote of thanks on this special day. Exactly 5 years ago today, 17 December 2015, we formally launched Women Radio 91.7 at the first VOW conference in Oriental Hotel, Lagos. Today, 5 years after, we have hosted a successful fifth VOW conference. We thank you all. We owe our existence to every listener, donor, funder, and advertising agency who continue to support our female-centric work. To the entire staff of Women Radio 91.7, we celebrate and salute your hard work and commitment to work. We have benefited from this year's conference despite holding it virtually. Words are not enough to tell you how this conference will help to further and continually push the women agenda in fighting against all forms of violence against women and girls. We will improve our programming for the benefit of Nigerian women and their families. I thank the organizing team and staff who put in their best to make VOW 2020 possible. Without each and every one of you, this year's VOW conference would not have been possible. I thank Dar Communications PLC, owners of AIT and Liberty TV, for their live broadcast you gave us. We are very grateful for this support. Our media colleagues, we thank you for joining this conversation and urge you to give good reportage in fighting violence against women and girls. We thank ActionAid, Nigeria, and Global Affairs Canada for supporting VOW 2020. On behalf of the Board of Directors of St. Ives Communications, owners of Women Radio 91.7, I wish you all a very good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abayomi Shonaya. Mr. Abayomi Shonaya, I must thank you for the support you've given to our sister, Tung Shonaya, who has worked tirelessly to ensure that we have a nice outing along with other team members. Thank you, Mr. Abayomi Shonaya, therefore, that vote of thanks. And we must thank Women Radio 2 and all the other partners who have made this possible. AIT, MacArthur Foundation, Action Aid Nigeria, RAPHA, and all the people that have contributed to this journey all along, Liberty TV, and Women Radio, and every other person. There's a long list. We must say a big thank you. It is the 5th anniversary of Women Radio, and they do this every year to give us the platform, the opportunity. Many people have asked, why have you called it Voice of Women Conference and you're having men talk? Yes, it is important for men to come together, and that's the whole essence. For all of us to come together, to raise our voices, to say no to gender-based violence, no matter the gender, no matter the social class, no matter who, men, women, we are coming together to say no to gender-based violence. Let's be good people. That has been established today. It is the 5th anniversary. Is it the 5th anniversary of women radio, and here it is important for us to toast to women radio and to everybody that is part of this, part of the success story of women radio in the last 5 years. We lift our glasses, even though I'm the only one that's lifting my glass here, to say congratulations, cheers. We wish you many, 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 many more successes in the year to come. The year 2021 will be better, and we'll have the opportunity of coming together under one roof again to celebrate, to toast to the great success of women radio. Thank you very much. I remain yours sincerely, Olutayo Shomide. See you some other time.